Hello and welcome to this week's Countryside podcast brought to you by NFU Mutual. An interesting show again with some varied selections and a bit of legislation, but sort of one that I suppose is needy on lots of sides of things regarding legislation, the use of pesticides and courses that are available as well.
Aren't we getting with it though, Simon? We can make legislation sound interesting on the radio.
Well, we don't go too deep into it, I suppose, but it's great that they in conjunction with the Isle of Man College of getting this. It's a sort of degree that you can take now, and people who are basically involved in farm assured products, they've got to have this by the end of November, I think.
This has been bouncing about for a while, Simon. Anybody who's ever used pesticides and sprays and a sprayer know full well that you need now to be much, much more careful with the potency of some of the sprays and the dangers associated with them to the operator and to the environment. So I'm not a bit surprised that this is coming forward, and in fact we'll welcome it.
I know. I used to hear, you'd be out and of course living north, where it's sort of flat and windy, and there'd be people waiting, because there hasn't been a time to spray.
I know.
And then
over the hedge.
And they'd be sort of looking, thinking, no, still. And then they'd see somebody out without somebody else without going out spraying. They'd go. Another tutton.
Well, we look over the hedge often, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I was at the Jurby Church. You were there as well, John.
Been to Jurby Church this time, Sam. Margaret and I do take time off this time of the year to go around the Flower Festival. It's a super community event, and it gets people into churches. Strange, Jurby Church, threatened with all sorts of closure and goodness knows what. But when you get a flower festival like that, the whole Isle of Man flocks to it, and so it needs something like that.
Yeah, and Sandra Kerrison told me, that there's been people there that said, "Oh, I never knew this is where Jurby Church is." And
yeah,
it is something different, and not just the flowers. There's loads of photographs and bits and pieces on display to see there.
And
too.
It is a real rural church, Simon, isn't it? Set up where it is on Jurby Head. It's a super spot in fine weather.
Yeah, talking about weather and climate, you were talking to a bit of an expert, isn't it?
Doug Fox. He really is. He's connected with the United Nations as a climatologist, and he was telling me he's just back from Italy, lecturing there to students studying climate change. And Doug, he's got a remarkable take on climate change. Some of the articles you hear about it, are sensationalist, and they're just sort of whipping up all sorts of notions about
propaganda.
It could be, but Doug Fox is very, very careful, very, very balanced, and says we're just monitoring it, we're looking at what's going on, we can see patterns that are confirming what we thought, and it's of benefit to us all.
Yes, and also it's nearly agricultural show season. It's nearly upon us, and you found out a little bit how preparations are going for the Southern show.
Well, we do each year, Sam. We go and preview the shows and talk to the secretaries or the president or the organisers, whoever, to see how it's all kicking off. Great Meadow is a lovely spot for the Southern Show. That's where it's going to be again. Sarah Comish, busy as ever. I must say I was impressed, Simon, with when she said come down to our house and do the recording. It was and Margaret is secretary of the Peel Gardeners, and I know that every room is full of boxes and catalogues, entry forms and goodness knows what up to showtime. And Sarah's is exactly the same, a very, very busy but very efficient secretary and a kingpin in the whole thing.
That's right. So here's this week's Countryside.
I'm not sure whether other farmers or other country dwellers noticed, but about a fortnight ago, just after a night's rain, there was a certain surge in growth. Fields that were only looking very, very ordinary, silage fields and hedgerows, for example, all of a sudden burst into a tremendous explosion of growth, and fields have produced tremendous crops of silage. I went to talk to Doug Fox, who is a climatologist, to see, is there such a thing as nitrogenous rain, because that's just what it looked like.
I've been doing this for going on 50 years now. It's a long time. Studying the climate, been involved in a number of climate research activities through my life. Probably the major one was being involved in the United Nations panel on climate change, their research panel, their scientific panel. And, been following that for all these years, just trying to keep up with what the latest information is and how it's changed over the last 20 years.
And you must have a better overview then than many of us who speculate about what's happening to the climate.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's a good comment. Yeah, I think I have some book learning that is maybe appropriate, but I'm also certain I don't have nearly the experience, for example, that farmers like yourself have with the everyday realities of the weather here on the island.
We only observe the sort of topical things that we see. You look deeper into the science of it.
Yeah, well, the main thing with climate is that it's a long-term record, and so it's very hard to experience that. I mean, you can experience climate, but you experience the weather. You experience the day-to-day changes or the year-to-year or month-to-month changes. You know that this year is drier than last year, it's colder than last year, what have you. But climate is really something that takes place over a 15 to 20-year period, and it's pretty hard to keep all that in your mind and keep the balance sheet going for that long a time.
Just recently, we had quite a cold spring here, and crops were quite slow. All of a sudden, we had just a warm night's rain, just a simple night's rain, and the growth seems to have exploded. My question is, can we get nitrogenous rain? Because that's just what it looked like.
Yeah, well, you certainly can get nitrogenous rain. The nitrogen that's emitted from, particularly animal feeding operations, overuse of nitrogen that outgasses from the soils if you put too much nitrogen on a crop. These kinds of things, heavy nitrogen emissions from power plants and things of that sort throughout the North Midlands of the UK, the agricultural belt really of Europe. If the wind is blowing from that direction, it's likely to be able to pick up and precipitate nitrogen that's been picked up from those sources.
And the interesting thing was, it wasn't just the fields, but the hedges and the verges were all showing the same kind of explosive growth, which suggested to me it was something more general.
The European Union has established things they call critical loads of nitrogen and critical loads of sulfur. And those are designed for natural areas. Those are designed for the kinds of national parks and areas that are not under cultivation, that are left natural. Too much nitrogen is not a good thing. Too much nitrogen can lead to, if nothing else, affecting non-native species, maybe encouraging them more than native species. It can lead to putting nitrogen into the water, which acidifies the streams and acidify the old acid rain business that we were concerned about 20 or so years ago.
And is the change all down to, or mainly down to, agriculture?
Agriculture is a significant but not the only source of these kinds of pollutants. Agriculture is a pretty significant nitrogen source. I wouldn't say the majority of nitrogen in the atmosphere comes from agriculture. It comes from automobiles. It comes from combustion of fossil fuels as well, coal-fired power plants.
But nitrogen is only a fairly recent factor in agriculture. I can remember the very first nitrogen being introduced onto the farm where I worked as a very young farm worker.
Yeah.
Is it just a blip in time?
It's a change over time. One of the changes that we see, we talk about climate change, and climate change really comes from monitoring a number of things. One of the things that we monitor is the availability of what we call reactive nitrogen in the atmosphere. Reactive nitrogen in the atmosphere only in historical terms came from lightning and those kinds of processes. Now we put nitrogen on fields, and a lot of that is reactive nitrogen. So we've increased the amount of reactive nitrogen in the atmosphere, dramatic amounts, over the past 50 years.
Doug Fox, an authority on weather and climate with a very, very balanced outlook, one which I welcomed. Not the sensational one, but quietly, Simon, just assessing what's going on, taking stock and keeping records, and a very, very level appreciation.
And it's funny this year, it's the first time I've seen it for a long time, that the grass, like you mentioned earlier, it shot up so quickly, and then there was a lot of wind for a few days, and it's the first time I've seen it blown over like a cereal crop.
It was strange what happened, Simon. I don't know, maybe other farmers seen it, I don't know, but I certainly did. And I thought it was nitrogen that we had sown on the fields that hadn't been washed in. But it was in the verges, on the road verges, and you look at the weeds on the road verges, it's really shot away. Don't know, it was something strange, something different.
Yeah, because certainly the bracken and the grass on the side of the roads has grown, but we'll not get into that one this week.
We better leave that one quiet, Simon.
Well, John, you've been involved, certainly your family, in the Alaman Flower Festival around the churches and chapels and everything around the island. It's been a fabulous display, hasn't it?
It really has, Simon. We're not involved so much this time round. Margaret, of course, is the flower arranger. I like to look at it. I love the ideas, and I can give us some ideas. But we do take some time off this time of the year just to go to appreciate the work that's gone on and the different interpretation of the themes. And in your part of the world, Simon, there was a lovely, lovely display, one at Andrews and one at Jurby as well.
That's right, and I went along at the weekend to Jurby Church and spoke to Sandra Kerrison, who told me about the success this year and why it's come about.
We're really pleased the way things have turned out. Well, absolutely staggered, to be honest. How everything has come together, not just for the Flower Festival, but for Jurby Church and its new beginnings.
Jurby Church over the years, it's a little bit out of the centre of the village now, but and it's had its troubles in the past, and something like this encourages people to come here, and people have come not just from the village but from far afield who didn't know where it was even.
Yes, that's true. I think it's the last time it was so busy was probably the time of the Vikings, when Jurby was the centre of the island from the point of view of where everything was happening. And I think that Jurby's gone through quite a difficult time in the last centuries, and I feel very much there's a great positive note now. This, of course, has come at exactly the right time for us. And as you say, a lot of people on the island don't know where Jurby is and don't know where Jurby Church is, which is quite difficult for us to understand, but that seems to be the case.
A lot of different themes that Jurby's had over the years as well. The kids have been involved, and lots of people, I suppose, who maybe not have been involved in it before have helped this year.
Yes, I think that I hadn't been responsible or been involved in the Flower Festival at all before. The people came together partly as friends of people who were friends of the church who were involved, and then we had some very good contacts. So we had some amazing designers who were prepared to come to Jurby because it was such a wonderful canvas. It's so light and open, and it lends itself to all sorts of exciting things that maybe other places don't.
It's fascinating because I mentioned before when I was talking to you that you see lots of the famous paintings in the world with the light and how well they capture a scene, and you've managed to do it with flowers.
Yes, well, some of the designers are just so incredibly imaginative, and if we think about the one with the transport theme, who could have thought that 2 or 3 palm fronds could become a Spitfire, and a few bits of gorse could become a gorse tram, complete with its seats and wonderful little wheels.
Yeah, and a bike there as well.
Yes, and the bike, yes, which is of course symbolic of so much of what goes on in Jurby at the moment.
One of the ones that took my eye as well is the display there's an old plough and horse collar and everything here, with flowers decorated around them. You see them lying in hedges with grass growing through them, but you've managed to capture it with some beautiful flowers as well. And that's been a part of Jurby with its agricultural history as well.
Yes, Jurby was all about farming, and at one time everyone was involved with farming, which kept it so that the people could survive during the hard times, but also led to its downfall and its poverty really over the centuries, because everyone had to move away from the parish, and the population halved in a century. During the 19th century, the population was cut by a half, and then it decreased even more. Things didn't improve, and we didn't move away from farming up to a point until the airfield was built in the 1930s.
Up above where the organ pipes are as well, there's another flavour of Jurby. I certainly remember it, the attempts to get the airship off the ground.
Yes, well, who would have thought that the organ and the high area at the side of the organ could be the inspiration for such an absolutely amazing depiction of the Jurby airship, and with its mast and the helium atom and the carapace, which was helped with the aerodynamics, which was a great new innovation. And it's just such a shame that it didn't actually ever materialise. So
it's the Isle of Man, there's time enough, yeah?
Yes, there is, yes.
And of course we couldn't go without mentioning, I suppose, I dare call it Harry Kelly's cottage lookalike that's there, surrounded by flowers. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's the one that everyone's talking about because it's such an absolutely beautiful cottage garden, so appealing to everybody, and the children want to go inside it, and everybody thinks it's just absolutely amazing.
I want to go in it as well. But it isn't just about that. I mean, you've got volunteers with beautiful homemade cakes and teas. It's all part and parcel of the sort of experience of it, isn't it?
Yes, I think that everybody wanted to give Jurby Church a boost, and so everybody's worked incredibly hard and in incredible hours in making cakes and manning the exhibition, washing up, all the things that are associated with this. It's been quite hard work. It's been very, very intense for the last few weeks setting it up. But it's just so good for Jurby. It's so good for Jurby Church, and it's just been so nice to see that everything's come together as we hoped it might, but it far exceeds any expectations we could possibly have had on this.
Sandra Kerrison telling me and showing me the wonderful flower displays on and pictures and all sorts on at the Jurby Church as part of the Isle of Man Flower Festival.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, the use of sprays and pesticides over the years in the farming and all sorts of outside parts of life, market garden and everything, to help the crops survive and prosper in various conditions and to keep them away from some pretty deadly diseases. To find out about more legislation that's coming in about the use of sprays and pesticides, I spoke to John Harrison from DEFA.
There are new rules coming into England on the 26th of November this year, and then again the following year, covering the application and then the application equipment. They're relevant to the Isle of Man because the farm assurance schemes that are used on the island are actually going to use meeting these criteria as a requirement to become farm assured.
Because people, I suppose, the Manx rumours get round, everyone goes, oh, every farmer will have to take this course and get trained on the sprays and have them all tested, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
It isn't the case. Ideally, I would like people to do the course so they can apply these products properly and effectively, because then they get the best use of them. But as far as legislation is concerned and that sort of thing, you would only need to be qualified to apply pesticides if you were in one of the farm assurance schemes, either the milling wheat one or the beef and sheep assurance schemes. And the milk as well.
Yeah. We all know, I suppose it's been proven as years have gone on, how pesticides and sprays have changed as well, and people have been more aware of what damage they can do to the environment. And does this seem a sort of sensible thing from that side of the coin?
It's because people have become aware of the damage to the environment that it has become important that people are trained, because part of the voluntary initiative that started in 2001 in the UK was to have an organisation that could prove to the government that people were sufficiently trained to use these chemicals so that the government would continue to allow them to be used. There was a threat in the late 1990s to early 2000 that lots of chemicals were going to be withdrawn because they weren't being applied properly.
From your experience as the use of sprays and pesticides and everything, has it gone up over the years or down?
In terms of actual volume, it's gone down quite significantly because the pesticides have become more concentrated, and so the actual concentrate, you use less of it, so the actual tonnage of pesticide use is reduced quite dramatically.
And what are they mainly used for on the Isle of Man? For crop growing and things, is it mainly?
And mainly on the Isle of Man, it's in the cereal and potato sector, and we wouldn't have Manx potatoes if we couldn't spray the potatoes, because blight would just wipe them out like they did in Ireland in the 1800s.
That shows how important it is, the control of these sprays and pesticides, because they do still have to be used.
Well, yes, we couldn't feed the world if we didn't have these pesticides, which is why it's important that we can prove that we're actually trained to use them and using them properly, so that the governments let us keep them.
Now, the Isle of Man government got involved in it with the Isle of Man College side of it as well, isn't it?
DEFA used to deliver the pesticide courses until very recently, when Isle of Man College expressed an interest in taking them on so they could expand their agricultural portfolio of qualifications. And so I've been working with the college to get them up to speed to running the courses themselves.
These courses, they're not just a piece of paper, it's something that if people do go in for, they'll learn a lot about what the sprays can do, how, like you said before, how efficient you can make them. It comes with a proper certificate at the end.
Well, yes, it's a UK recognised certificate, and it's important to remember that these chemicals are expensive, and so you need to be applying to effectively to get the best value out of them. There's no point in putting too much on or too little on, else you're wasting your time. So it really is a great value that you actually know and understand what you're putting on, where and how much.
The other side of it is the testing on the sprays and people have got, because I suppose people in years gone by have had them lying in sheds on the farms for many years.
Simon, I've seen a sprayer going down the road with a Hessian sack tied on the top rather than a lid on the top of it. It's been appalling. The sprayer testing's coming in next year, and they've got to be tested within 3 years and then within 5 after that. It's a basic test. It ensures that the state the sprayer came out of the factory in is what the state it's in now. It doesn't mean you have to add anything onto the sprayer to meet any new requirements. It's just that sprayer should be in the condition it was when it left the factory when it was manufactured.
And that can be done here on the island as well?
Yes, it can be done here on the island. At the moment it's me that does it, but we're hoping to move that on to somebody else. But there are benefits from the sprayer testing. There's certain things that go wrong with the sprayer, like the pressure gauge, and farmers have no way of realising that that's not working, and that can have big effects on the efficacy of what they're doing.
So it's not just the actual chemicals that are getting tested, the machinery that's applying it is?
Yes, it's very important that the application machinery is as you think it is. We've had a case where people thought they was spraying at a certain pressure and weren't, and that was why the sprays they were using weren't working. They had an issue with disease control, and it became apparent that it wasn't the sprays they were using, it's actually how they were applying them that wasn't working.
The be-all and end-all of it, if you're not farm assured, you don't really have to have it at the moment, but you've just mentioned a lot of advantages that people may well want to have under their belt.
Exactly. If you're not farm assured, you don't necessarily have to have it at the moment, and also if you use a contractor to do it would need to be qualified, but that would get you out of it. There are benefits, great benefits from actually knowing what you're doing. Lots of farmers are the world's worst at just picking something up and getting on with it and not working out how you should use it properly. And it's a very, well, I would say this, but I think it's essential that you are qualified if you're using that sort of thing.
Agricultural Policy Manager for DEFA, John Harrison, told me about some news about pesticide law coming into the Isle of Man. And those courses we spoke about at the Isle of Man College, if you want to get involved in that, you can contact Mrs. Carol Collister on 648 206, 648 206. And it's been a topic for many years, John, hasn't it? And I suppose the way the world's gone. When we were kids, there used to be all sorts of things on the farm, but of course you knew, wasn't it? You were just They weren't locked away, nothing, but you were told and educated at such a young age, weren't you?
Yeah, and they weren't as complex as they are today, Simon, and
not as concentrated,
and probably weren't as dangerous either. Although some of them may have been. But I think we shouldn't be surprised that this is coming about now, that this is now being controlled properly, and I think it will suit farmers and the environment, the same way. There'll be some who will be find it irksome, but I think it's probably right that we are looked after.
Indeed, John. Well, it's getting to that time of year. The old shows are coming upon us, the agricultural shows, the Royal Manx in early August, but first, an ever-growing in popularity Southern show, seemingly.
You're right, Simon. Yeah, the Southern Show does grow in popularity. They've developed it now over 2 days, the Saturday and the Sunday, and still at Great Meadow, which is a lovely, lovely site for a show. It involves an awful lot of work, and I think probably the key person in the show is the secretary. And in the case of the Southern Show, it's Sarah Comish.
It's good. It's been fairly consistent. They've got a few less entries this year than last year. Last year, of course, was our centenary. But the regulars are all back, and we've got a few new exhibitors as well in the sheep section and the cattle section, so
because
that's good.
It is very much a traditional event, isn't it, the show?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been going since I was a kid, and it hasn't changed that much down at the Southern.
But your people were heavily involved in it.
Yes. Dad's taken a bit of a step back now, but he's always been involved, and my grandfather.
So it's no wonder then that you were to take part now in your time in organising the Southern Show and see that it all runs well.
Well, I did always want to get involved in the show, so I got what I hoped for.
So, Sarah, this year now, we're looking forward now to 2015.
Yeah.
You said the entries are okay.
Yeah, they're all right, yeah.
Any innovations then for the show? Anything new that we're going to see?
We've got our centenary sculpture on display. That's Darren Jackson's created this to mark the centenary, and it's going to be unveiled next Sunday, and it's going to be on display at the show this year.
But thankfully this time it's not in ice, is it?
No, he's created a bull larger than life out of old farm implements that he's collected from around the island.
So what's the significance then of Darren's bull?
Well, he actually modelled it on Peter Quayle's bull, Pasturefield Turbo Tommy, who turned out that he won the centenary last year. So we've decided we're going to keep the name Pasturefield Turbo Tommy for the sculpture.
And will he have a place of prominence then on the show field?
Oh, very much. You couldn't hide him. He's huge. Yeah, it's a huge sculpture. It's amazing.
Anything else new for the family? Because it's very much a family day, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's all the regular stuff. The Polo Club, Triskelion Polo Club, are doing a demonstration this year on the Saturday. So that should be very exciting. And the young farmers are doing something on the Sunday. I don't know what yet. I know we are definitely doing the lawnmowers again. Yes, the lawnmowers will be back. I don't know what else the young farmers have got planned, but I'm sure it's going to be very entertaining.
Now, as we drive past Great Meadow from time to time, we see a lot of refurbishment going on at Great Meadow.
Yes.
The entrance and all has been beautiful stonework at Great Meadow.
Yes.
But has it affected the show at all?
It does, yes. But hopefully our fabulous show planners have got a way round that. The show field, it will be a new layout this year. But hopefully we've made very good use of the space we've got, so it should be much more interesting for everybody.
And the people who lay it out are very, very experienced, aren't they? Who else is involved in that?
They're excellent. Well, Ray Gorn has always done the organising of the show field. He stepped down this year, but his son Stephen Gorn and his granddaughter Bryony and Charlie Vernon, Sheila Gorn, they're all working very hard on making this new show plan work.
Well, you say he stepped down, but I bet he'll not be far away.
I'd still call him. I still call him for advice, yeah.
So on the run-up then, your particular job, Sarah, now you'll have to engage judges.
Yes.
Not all on the island, you bring some over from away.
We've got 10 UK judges coming over this year. We're bringing a UK judge over for the Lockdown section as well, because that's increased. We've got very good local judges. Yes, our judges are coming from Scotland, Cumbria, down south as well, in England.
So will they be coming for the second time, third time, or are some of them coming for the first time ever?
Most of them will be the first time
that
they've judged here, yeah.
So we'll hope for fine weather then, and
hopefully.
and a good day for them. Yeah. And the thing that always used to set the show field off for me, even as a boy coming, was the machinery actually working on the field.
Yes.
It gives that sort of sense of occasion. Oh, we're going to have that this year.
Oh yes, definitely. The vintage machinery will be on display. Again, we should have plenty of stuff there. And I'm hoping they'll still do their vintage parade as well, because that's one of my favourite things.
Tell us the dates.
25th and 26th of July.
Right. Sarah Comish, the hard-working, very reliable secretary, the kingpin of the show, seeing that everything goes well, looking forward to the show in spite of all the fact that there is so much to do. And when I went to a house, Simon, it was a show secretary's typical house. Boxes and boxes of catalogues, of road signs, of different instructions and sheets to be filled in and signed. A very hard-working girl.
The people that seem to run the agricultural shows, I don't know if it's luck or just the sort of the way that people look of who will sort of be succeeding the presidents and the secretaries and all, but they always seem to have people that get on with a different variety of the agricultural, the farming world and whatever that comes.
I think underneath it, Sam, there's a super infrastructure under each show, that really makes sure that it goes well. And it's hard work, a lot of hard work, but we all enjoy going to the shows, and we'll be there, Simon.
We will.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
There we are. Hope we've entertained you and educated you again on Countryside this week.
We're not people to educate anybody else, Simon. It's us that's being educated. But we do learn a lot in this programme, don't we? Meet a lot of good people, a lot of nice people, and hear interesting things.
Yes, that's it. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back at the same time next week. So from me, Simon Clark.
And from me, John Kenyon.
We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.